Thanks for coming out and watching the oxymoronic Reddit professional show, where I showcase the best and worst of the internet. Here I comment on brilliant and hilarious comment chains regarding dumb shit on the internet for you to enjoy. Make sure to subscribe, hit the little bell button so that you get notifications every time we come up with a new video. Enjoy this week's show. I am the son of a billionaire, part of the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. Ask me anything. I am 29 years old. My father is worth just shy of $1 billion. And he's on a rapid trajectory to be worth significantly more. I'll leave it at that and provide details as requested. I'll try to be as honest as possible, but obviously I'll be vague on identifiable details. I don't really have anyone to talk to about this because of the uniqueness of the situation, so it's cathartic to speak openly about a subject that's obviously a bit taboo. I'd like to talk about it because it helps me feel more connected, and hopefully it will offer perspective to anyone who has preconceived notions on the super rich, not that I don't expect to validate some of the stereotypes. In sociology class the other day, we had an interesting discussion on how everyone seems to want to identify as being middle class. Poor people often say lower middle class, and people who make $100 to $600K a year call themselves high middle class. It almost appears that there's a stigma to being very wealthy. You even said it yourself in the description, that it is almost taboo to talk about being wealthy. I'm curious what your insight on this matter might be. For example, why do you think it's taboo to be rich? Have you experienced any resentment from people because of it? What's something about the super rich that you wish the other classes understood about you, as a way to try to make them possibly resent you less? I don't like saying I'm rich because there's a huge risk of resentment. I feel like I should apologize for being the 1%. The sentiment is that the money shouldn't be ours, that it's a zero-sum game and we're stealing from the poor by being so rich. I don't want people hating my dad because of how much money he has. He worked his ass off to earn it, and it was all to provide for his family, as is the goal of most families. That he happened to earn a lot more in pursuit of that isn't something I think he should feel guilty for. He didn't take from the poor, he just had a lot of success. It's jarring for people to vilify him because his career just happened to earn him an extreme amount of wealth. This is not to suggest that he's better than those who had less financial success. There's obviously luck and good timing contributing to where he is today. Resenting me, I could understand more, because I did jack squat to earn it. But by the same token, I didn't choose this, so I don't think I should be vilified for something I effectively have no control over. Personally, I believe the resentment comes from the mentality that someone sitting at the top of a company is paying their workers much less than they could easily afford to. The 1%er sitting at the top of the Walmart chain, making billions of dollars, while his employees make minimum wage, living paycheck to paycheck, are struggling to pay for a shitty old car and an apartment, when all it could take to throw their lives into chaos is for that car to inevitably break down, knowing all the while that the guy sitting at the top could sacrifice $1 billion and make all their lives much more livable. My father's businesses are very small, each salaries maybe 20 people. I think most of them have found substantial success as part of their work, but I don't see the books. Part of the reason why he has earned so much money is because there are so few people among whom to split the profit. My dad doesn't work in the public sector, doesn't answer to shareholders, and doesn't want to lose what he considers to be an impeccable team. So he supports them very well. Your dad hiring? Your dad adopting? F that, he's single? I'll f your dad, OP. I don't give a shit. I'll let him smear foie gras on D's titties. Drown me in caviar, my guy. Do your nearest and dearest know your worth, potential, or otherwise? Money never made the man, so describe yourself and your interests. Do you like toast? Do you despise cauliflower? Are you indifferent to Scrabble? And finally, how are you? Well, obviously my wife knows. We have one pair of friends who at least know my parents are very wealthy, since they've stayed with us at one of their properties. Everyone else, hopefully, assumes we have little more than the middle-class lifestyle that we provide for ourselves. Toast? Love it. Cauliflower? My wife's good at disguising it. Love Scrabble, but I'm better at the fast-paced games. I'm about as stereotypical as a Redditor comes. White, male, introverted, gamer. I didn't have much ambition of my own and will almost certainly never match the enormous success that my father has had. That leads to a lot of overwhelming guilt in my day-to-day life. Wait, so does your father not share his wealth with you? We enjoy their material assets, get awesome gifts for Christmas, and each have a trust fund of $28K a year. But to have a comfortable life and income, we have to have our own jobs. For now, at least. Why do you think that's the case? $28,000 per year is less than pennies compared to how much money he has. I'm not OP, nor rich, but from the bits I've heard here and there, it's rather common for rich folks to make their children live an ordinary life. It's definitely the exception rather than the rule, so I wouldn't call it common. It isn't unusual for a family with a net worth of $2 to $3 million to help their adult children out in a more minimal way. but for a billionaire to give his son only $28,000 per year is very unusual. Making money takes risk. Learning to manage money and take the right risk is better done with money you earned yourself. Giving lots of money to someone that didn't earn it robs them of the chance to make that money themselves. What's that one thing you never got as a kid? A gaming console, or as my dad affectionately referred to it, the Super No Friendo. Somehow computer games didn't fall into that purview though, so I had a top-end desktop and laptop anyway. Didn't stop me from being obsessed with gaming. The PS2 was the first purchase I made when I started getting my own paycheck. Seems like even though you had connections to wealth, it wasn't used as a magic wand to get you shiny things all the time. Did you learn the value of money and earning over just having money? Sort of. We, my siblings and I, certainly didn't have carte blanche, and I'm self-sufficient currently outside of a growing and accessible trust fund. But they have a what's mine is yours mentality when it comes to enjoying their homes and possessions, which are plentiful. As we speak, my wife and I are staying in one of their massive homes for a stress-free weekend, and everything from the cars to the cook is at our disposal. These days, I've never asked for something that they've said no to, but I've never tried to push the limits. What are your thoughts in the Syria conflict? I'm not nearly knowledgeable enough to form a strong opinion. Oil prices did go up as a consequence though, so that's something. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for you? Good thing. It's such an enormous business that I think I can safely reveal that one. Do you have any regular friends now? What's a Friday night like for you? My wife and I are shut-ins and will spend most evenings just watching shows and playing video games together. When we meet up with friends, we meet up at the pub or go to one of each other's houses. A couple of times we have taken some friends up to one of my parents' properties, but only after we've come to know them quite well. But generally, unless I'm with my parents at the time, I live a very standard middle-class lifestyle. How did you two meet? High school sweethearts. How did you know that she was the one you were going to marry? I've never felt more comfortable being open and honest with anyone else than I do with her. I feel wholly and happily myself with her, which is a remarkable feeling. First time I'm jealous in this thread. Some things are worth more than money. Something I've always wondered, if your internet or cable or phone or whatever goes down, do you, or whoever would do that for you, call the regular helpline of whatever company services your connection? Or is there a special, super secret, high priority line you would have access to? I work for an ISP running phone support, and I'm curious as to whether I may inadvertently get someone famous on the line one of these days. I actually wouldn't know, because almost all of those things are handled by one person who is directly employed by my parents. We tell him what he wants or what's wrong, and he makes it happen. My parents don't need to know how. I figured it'd be something along those lines, but I also figured it may be a chance to find out. Ah well, thanks for responding, and I do hope you find some semblance of normalcy, or whatever else you may be looking for. Now we need an I am a modern butler to a billionaire family. What kind of schools did you go to? Were your peers wealthy? What do you do for a living? I went to a private school for grade school, a boarding school for high school, and then private university, which I eventually dropped out of. Since the familial wealth grew as I did, the peer group evolved over time, but I never understood the extent of their or our wealth until recently. My perspective was more than a bit off growing up. As for my current job, I work a generic IT position with a standard salary, nothing that will produce the kind of fortune my father's work has. I have to say, fantastic AMA. Your answers are breaking the stereotype you mentioned. I really like your lifestyle. Your parents didn't give you a free pass with their money, and the pressure to make as much money as them, it seems, it's only you, not them, telling you to have more ambition. You look down to earth. My question, do your parents pressure you to want more, make more money? In my situation, my father worked his ass off to have as much money as he does. I am ambitious, not as much as him, yet, but I do get just a little tiny bit of pressure from him. Well, I do think that my anxiety comes from my dad wanting me to do better, in part. As I mentioned elsewhere, I dropped out of college. I did terribly in school, had high overall intelligence and tested well, but I just failed to put in the necessary sustained effort. I've recently been diagnosed with ADHD, and the difference since starting treatment has been profound. But I wouldn't dare tell my father that because A, he's convinced that it's a fake condition, and B, I doubt the diagnosis myself because it feels a little too convenient of an excuse. I've been taught that there's no excuse for not succeeding other than not working hard enough, and by that metric, I've largely been a failure. My dad's success and his hope for my success has been an enormous burden, but I think at this point he's generally given up on me having the same drive as him. Thoughts on economics and/or politics? Libertarian free market, radical socialism, social democracy, liberal welfare state? I generally lean conservative libertarian on fiscal issues, which probably isn't surprising.
What kind of car do you drive? A 2014 Subaru Outback. Prior to that, a very used 98 Outback. Probably not the answer you were expecting. As for my parents, the primary cars at each property are a Mercedes GLS and SL Roadster. They have lots of others, but nothing too fancy. Mostly old Chevy and Ford cars, primarily driven by the various employees they have. Did your father insist on a prenup for your wife to sign before marriage? How often do you speak to your mom? Which parent are you closer to? They suggested a prenup, but it didn't happen. My wife hates their wealth and wants no part in it, so I'm not concerned about her trying to run away with it. My relationship with them is complicated. I appreciate what they've provided, but the emotional connection has been poor. I wish I could feel closer to them, but I just don't think they're wired for that kind of relationship. Dad's a workaholic, mom's a socialite. I'm the kid who didn't do everything perfectly and felt like the pariah for a decade. Things are better now, but conversations are rarely more than business and small talk. You mentioned that you're doing this to feel more connected. From what do you feel disconnected, and in what ways? I don't want to tell anyone what my family is worth and what I will eventually have. I'm afraid of the dynamic that will result with friends. And it can go many different ways. On my part, I don't want to come across as braggy or entitled. On their end, I'm afraid that friends could respond with awkwardness, resentment, expectation, etc. It sounds cynical, but I've seen it myself with my parents and some of their friends, so I generally don't tell anyone. But at the same time, it's becoming such a monumental part of my life and my future that I want to talk about it with whomever will listen, if only to use them as a sounding board, as selfish as that sounds. So these facts and feelings are bottled up, and holding it back creates a divide. I want to talk freely about it, but I don't want anyone I'm actually close with to know about it. Got any rich friends? That's the only outlet you have for that. Don't have to be billionaires, but enough to understand the consequences and issues of money. I had a lot of friends in high school who I only realized later were very rich. I didn't keep in touch with them, but I could probably relate better to them. At the same time, though, I don't want to isolate myself to that circle. I don't want to lose perspective of a normal lifestyle. What type of hobbies do you have? I like audio-related stuff. You need to be a billionaire to afford some of the top-of-the-line things. And growing plants. Technology, media, games. I have an awesome home theater, which is my biggest piece of personal extravagance. So, my great-great-grandparents were very wealthy. They were in the coal business, I believe. So their children, my great-grandparents, grew up wealthy and never did anything. And by the time my grandparents were adults, all the money was gone. Is this something you're worried about or have thought about? I cited a study in another comment that found that 70% of wealthy families lose that status within one generation, 90% in two. So it seems pretty common, and it makes sense. Not only are you dispersing it across more heirs over each generation, but you're also raising children who are increasingly unaware of the value of hard work and only know the luxury lifestyle. It's easy to see how it can be squandered. Are you any less miserable than we are? I have emotional problems like everyone else, but I don't have to worry about my paycheck. I don't have to worry about my retirement. I don't have to worry about supporting my child financially. I don't have to worry about a medical crisis ruining our family. There are so many burdens that I simply won't know. I wouldn't dare make a claim to the same sadness and difficulties that many people deal with. I don't have to worry about a medical crisis ruining our family. Ah, the joys of living in the UK, where this applies to all of us. Can I borrow $5? Might have said yes, but you didn't use the magic word. Can I borrow $5,000, please? Actually, I think the words are tax deductible. What would you do if your dad pulls out of your inheritance? As in, he donates all the money you're expecting and you get nothing. You get no stock options or whatever. Absolutely nothing. Zero. If you enjoyed this week's effective way to waste time, hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. If you are enjoying the series, leave me a comment below. A special shout out to the content creators. You frickin' rock.